So 2 quick norms. Welcome, everybody. When we come back together after conversation, I'll raise my hand, and if you'll raise yours as well, and then we'll just naturally come back. And then the second thing I would ask is if you'll share your name every time you share, and so that we can start to address one another and sort of build those colleagues. My name is Emily Heflin Crouch. I'm a principal at Uncommon Schools. And to start, before we jump into the session, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the people at your table and then just speak briefly about the challenges that you've encountered coaching teachers. Okay? Go ahead and share with the people at your table. I mean, it doesn't need to be around. Feel free to go 2s and 3s.
I can start off. That's where I did my before. I'm from Massachusetts. Yeah, sorry. Cool. Shrewsbury.
You know, that's good. So that's great. But previously, I was an instructional coach at KIPP in New Orleans, and I think one of the biggest challenges for me in general is transitioning.
Thank you so much. With that, we're going to dive into the session. When we think about great leaders do 2 things really well. Great leaders take care of their people. They take care of their people, they take care of their people. When I say take care of their people, I mean they inspire, I mean they motivate, I mean they make them feel safe, I mean they make them feel good, I mean they create good working conditions. You take care of your people. And then the second thing great leaders do is they make their people better. Okay, so in this session, we're going to focus on both of those things. We're going to think about and talk about how we take care of our people, how we make them feel safe, how we make them feel good, how we inspire them, and then we're also going to talk about the coaching. How do we make them better? Because I'm sure many of you, I've had leaders who have done both, but not at the same time. I've had leaders who took really good care of me and made me feel really good, but they didn't make me better. And I've also had leaders and coaches who made me better, but they didn't make me feel very good. And it takes both, okay? It takes both. And so we're going to start with this idea that we have to take care of our people. And so we're going to watch a 7-minute TED Talk. Simon Sinek, is anyone in the room familiar with him? Okay, he's one of my favorites. He's a professor at Columbia now. He does consulting for all kinds of corporations around the U.S. And he's basically just always asking the question of what makes a leader great. And what can we learn from these great leaders? So in this particular talk, he is looking at why good leaders make you feel safe. And so this is all around how do we take care of our people? What are your biggest takeaways around how we take care of our people? So with that, let's watch.
There's a man by the name of Captain William Swenson, who recently was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions on September 8th, 2009. On that day, a column of American and Afghan troops were making their way through a part of Afghanistan to help protect a group of government officials, a group of Afghan government officials who'd be meeting with some local village elders. The column came under ambush and was surrounded on 3 sides. And amongst many other things, Captain Swenson was recognized for running into live fire to rescue the wounded and pull out the dead. One of the people he rescued was a sergeant, and he and a comrade were making their way to a medevac helicopter. And what was remarkable about this day is, by sheer coincidence, one of the medevac medics happened to have a GoPro camera on his helmet and captured the whole scene on camera. It shows Captain Swenson and his comrade bringing this wounded soldier who received a gunshot to the neck. They put him in the helicopter, and then you see Captain Swenson bend over and give him a kiss before he turns around to rescue more. I saw this, and I thought to myself, where do people like that come from? What is that? That is some deep, deep emotion when you would want to do that. There's a love there. And I want to know, why is it that I don't have people that I work with like that? You know, in the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In business, we give bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others so that we may gain. Right? So I asked myself, where do people like this come from? And my initial conclusion was that they're just better people. That's why they're attracted to the military. These better people are attracted to this concept of service. But that's completely wrong. What I learned is that it's the environment. And if you get the environment right, every single one of us has the capacity to do these remarkable things. And more importantly, others have that capacity too. I've had the great honor of getting to meet some of these who we would call heroes, who've put themselves and put their lives at risk to save others. And I asked them, why would you do it? Why did you do it? And they all say the same thing, because they would have done it for me. It's this deep sense of trust and cooperation. So trust and cooperation are really important here. The problem with concepts of trust and cooperation is that they are feelings, they're not instructions. I can't simply say to you, trust me, and you will. I can't simply instruct two people to cooperate, and they will. It's not how it works, it's a feeling. So where does that feeling come from? If you go back 50,000 years to the Paleolithic era, to the early days of Homo sapien, what we find is that the world was filled with danger. All of these forces working very, very hard to kill us. Nothing personal. Whether it was the weather, lack of resources, maybe a saber-toothed tiger, all of these things working to reduce our lifespan. And so we evolved into social animals, where we lived together and worked together in what I call a circle of safety, inside the tribe, where we felt like we belonged. And when we felt safe amongst our own, the natural reaction was trust and cooperation. There are inherent benefits to this. It means I can fall asleep at night and trust that someone from within my tribe will watch for danger. If we don't trust each other, if I don't trust you, that means you won't watch for danger. Bad system of survival. The modern day is exactly the same thing. The world is filled with danger, things that are trying to frustrate our lives or reduce our success, reduce our opportunity for success. It could be the ups and downs of the economy, the uncertainty of the stock market. It could be a new technology that renders your business model obsolete overnight. Or it could be your competition that is sometimes trying to kill you, it's sometimes trying to put you out of business, but at the very minimum, is working hard to frustrate your growth and steal your business from you. We have no control over these forces. These are a constant and they're not going away. The only variable are the conditions inside the organization. And that's where leadership matters, because it's the leader that sets the tone. When a leader makes the choice to put the safety and lives of the people inside the organization first, to sacrifice their comforts and sacrifice the tangible results so that the people remain and feel safe and feel like they belong, remarkable things happen. I was flying on a trip, and I was witness to an incident where a passenger attempted to board before their number was called. And I watched the gate agent treat this man like he had broken the law, like a criminal. He was yelled at for attempting to board one group too soon. So I said something. I said, why do you have to treat us like cattle? Why can't you treat us like human beings? And this is exactly what she said to me. She said, sir, if I don't follow the rules, I could get in trouble or lose my job. All she was telling me is that she doesn't feel safe. All she was telling me is that she doesn't trust her leaders. The reason we like flying Southwest Airlines is not because they necessarily hire better people, it's because they don't fear their leaders. You see, if the conditions are wrong, we're forced to expend our own time and energy to protect ourselves from each other. And that inherently weakens the organization. When we feel safe inside the organization, we will naturally combine our talents and our strengths and work tirelessly to face the dangers outside and seize the opportunities. The closest analogy I can give to what a great leader is like being a parent. If you think about what being a great parent is, what do you want? What makes a great parent? We want to give our child opportunities, education, discipline them when necessary, all so that they can grow up and achieve more than we could for ourselves. Great leaders want exactly the same thing. They want to provide their people opportunity, education, discipline when necessary, build their self-confidence, give them the opportunity to try and fail, all so that they can achieve more than we could ever imagine for ourselves. Charlie Kim, who's the CEO of a company called NextJump in New York City, a tech company, he makes the point that if you had hard times in your family, would you ever consider laying off one of your children? We would never do it. Then why do we consider laying off people inside our organization? Charlie implemented a policy of lifetime employment. If you get a job at NextJump, you cannot get fired for performance issues. In fact, if you have issues, they will coach you and they will give you support, just like we would with one of our children who happens to come home with a C from school. It's the complete opposite. This is the reason so many people have such a visceral hatred, sort of anger at some of these banking CEOs with their disproportionate salaries and bonus structures. It's not the numbers. It's that they have violated the very definition of leadership. They have violated this deep-seated social contract. We know that they allowed their people to be sacrificed so they can protect their own interests. Or worse, they sacrifice their people to protect their own interests. This is what so offends us, not the numbers. Would anybody be offended if we gave a $150 million bonus to Gandhi? How about a $250 million bonus to Mother Teresa? Do we have an issue with that? None at all. None at all. Great leaders would never sacrifice the people to save the numbers. They would sooner sacrifice the numbers to save the people. Bob Chapman, who runs a large manufacturing company in the Midwest called Barry Waymiller, in 2008 was hit very hard by the recession, and they lost 30% of their orders overnight. Now, in a large manufacturing company, this is a big deal, and they could no longer afford their labor pool. They needed to save $10 million. So, like so many companies today, the board got together and discussed layoffs. And Bob refused. You see, Bob doesn't believe in head counts. Bob believes in heart counts. And it's much more difficult to simply reduce the heart count. And so they came up with a furlough program. Every employee from secretary to CEO was required to take 4 weeks of unpaid vacation. They could take it any time they wanted, and they did not have to take it consecutively. But it was how Bob announced the program that mattered so much. He said, it's better that we should all suffer a little than any of us should have to suffer a lot. And morale went up. They saved $20 million. And most importantly, as would be expected, when the people feel safe and protected by the leadership of the organization, the natural reaction is to trust and cooperate. And quite spontaneously, nobody expected, people started trading with each other. Those who could afford it more would trade with those who could afford it less. People would take 5 weeks so that somebody else only had to take 3. Leadership is a choice. It is not a rank. I know many people at the senior-most levels of organizations who are absolutely not leaders. They are authorities. And we do what they say because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And I know many people who are at the bottoms of organizations who have no authority, and they are absolutely leaders. And this is because they have chosen to look after the person to the left of them, and they have chosen to look after the person to the right of them. This is what a leader is. I heard a story of some Marines who were out in theater, and as is the Marine custom, the officer ate last, and he let his men eat first. And when they were done, there was no food left for him. And when they went back out in the field, his men brought him some of their food so that he may eat. Because that's what happens. We call them leaders because they go first. We call them leaders because they take the risk before anybody else does. We call them leaders because they will choose to sacrifice so that their people may be safe and protected and so their people may gain. And when we do, the natural response is that our people will sacrifice for us. They will give us their blood and sweat and tears to see that their leader's vision comes to life. And when we ask them, why would you do that? Why would you give your blood and sweat and tears for that person? They all say the same thing. Because they would have done it for me. And isn't that the organization we would all like to work with? Thank you very much.
So with that, will you discuss with one person at your table what most resonates with you? So one person at your table, what most resonates with you about taking care of our people? Great. Could we have a few people share out, please, what resonated most with you? If you wouldn't mind to share your name, please.
I'm Rita. So several things resonated with us. One of them was like replicating that family structure.
Yep.
And then my friend here talked about how that would be a nice word to transfer to the classroom
Yes.
for kids as well.
Yes, yes, that's nice. When I said at the beginning, I think a leader does two things really well. I think a teacher does two things really well. A teacher takes care of her students and builds really strong relationships and knows them inside and outside the classroom. And then a teacher knows content so well that a teacher is able to push every single child where they need to go along that trajectory. And so again, we take it back to a leader, it's the same thing. We take care of our people and we know how to push our people so that they grow. Other things that resonated with you from the talk? Yes, and your name?
Chelsea.
Chelsea, thank you.
Fred and I were talking about like where that line is, right?
Sure.
Like taking care of people, and
Yes.
then also it's important to remove people that are ineffective quickly, right? So it doesn't, it's not negative for kids. And so we're kind of just discussing like, you know, what models are there, right, for having people feel supported and accountable, but also like they're not forever like on the chopping block.
Yes, yes. Anybody else discuss that? Okay, so one of the challenges of leadership. Anything else that resonated? Yes.
Hi, I'm Erin, and I was thinking about the circle of safety with danger outside and what you do when it feels like one of the people in your family in the safe circle is actually creating the danger to other people.
Yes, yes. Okay, so some of the challenges, good. Okay, so let's step back a moment. I'm a very young leader, so I taught for 6 years. 2 years in first, 2 years in second, 2 years in third, and then opened Leadership Prep Canarsie last year, our founding year, and going into the second year. Have had the opportunity to work at Relay Graduate School of Education for the last 4 years with their first and second year teachers, and then for the last 2 years with their principal and institute. And I will say that I've never found a teacher that I cannot work with. And that spans about 300 teachers. That's my experience. I've had teachers that we've had to say, I don't think this is the right fit for you. Do you think it's the right fit for you? I think there's a better organization and I think I can help you find it, but I don't think this is the one. And I think it has everything to do with taking care of your people. I work with excellent leaders from Uncommon, from Relay, from KIPP, from Achievement First, from our district partnerships in New York City. And a lot of people are good at taking teachers to the next level, but I don't always see them taking care of teachers. And so when I decided to found Leadership Prep Canarsie, there were 2 reasons I wanted to do it. One, because I wanted to create a school where I would send my own child. And so if I wasn't going to speak to my child that way, if I wasn't going to ask my child to sit that way, or speak that way, or do that way, we weren't going to do it at Leadership Prep Canarsie. So I think that's a moral imperative for all of us as educators and leaders. We create classrooms and schools where we'd send our own children. And then the second piece is I wanted to create a school where I would want to teach. Okay, where I was given the freedom and the flexibility and the space to be creative and also the space to be coached. Okay, and so that is our challenge, and that's what we're going to dive into today. It is my firm belief that when you believe in people, when you believe fully in people, when you tell them authentically and genuinely what they are doing well, they're going to come on board with you and they're going to do their absolute best and they're going to reach their potential. Okay, so that's my belief. I believe that we take care of people and then I just fully believe they come along with us, or it's an amicable end and you say, you know what, this isn't the best place, let's find the best place for you. So with that, let's jump into the coaching. So before we dive in and watch other coaches, I want you to think of a concrete moment, and I believe this is on page 2 of the packet, a concrete moment in your life where you got outstanding feedback. I want you to name the person, the moment in history, and what they said to you. Okay, so take some time and reflect on that. And now with a different person at your table, if you'll just turn the other way, will you share those 3 characteristics, please? Okay, Kelly, will you start us off, please?
3 things that really, I guess, fired me up when I got that feedback was it was affirmation. There are things that you know you do really well, and you believe it within, but to have someone who I guess is just coming in, looking from a different lens, to affirm that it's incredible.
Yes.
So it fired me up to work even harder.
Yep.
And at this point where I felt unsafe or, oh yikes, what is this person thinking?
Yep.
Or how does she feel about this classroom? That immediately made you feel safe to be affirmed of what you already feel within and to hear from someone else.
And for those of us who have been coaching for a while, we forget that how our teachers feel when we walk in the room is, oh shit. Okay? That's mostly how they feel. Unless you have a school where that's very normal, but it's just like, is this my best moment of my lesson? Am I prepared? Do I have all my papers already passed? Are they going to see that I don't have, but it's just this one moment that I don't have it? And that's the anxiety. So Kelly, that's a great point. Other things that make feedback, these concrete, it's this, and this, yes.
Yeah, well, it's really specific. So
Specific.
if they affirm you
Yes.
and they give you a specific example
Yes.
of what that was,
Yes.
that really fires you up
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Because you know that they were paying attention.
Yes.
And that they really meant, they were sincere.
That's so nice. Versus the generic, it was great to be in your classroom today.
Right.
Smiley face. Maybe it was, I'm not sure. Because you've heard that to me 17 times. Other thoughts, other things that make feedback. Yes. Is it Nina? No, this is Nina.
Julianne.
Julianne, okay.
So one of the 3 concrete takeaways was that this feedback was like directionable or actionable. So I had a clear understanding of what I needed to do in order to improve as a result of the conversation or the comment.
Nice. Nice. Did anybody else mention that? Actionable or small enough that you could do it? Nice. Okay, other thoughts at the table? Is there
Oh, I was gonna say, it was a conversation, what did I
Yes.
feel like I needed to
Yes.
work on, and
Yes.
talking through it with me and thinking through it, like a thought partner.
Yes. Very good. Any other final thoughts before we watch some coaching? Yes.
It helped to give me clarity.
Yes.
And I say that because there was no value attached to it.
Nice.
So in some ways that helped to bring clarity for what I wasn't able to see.
Great. That's great. Nice. So, yes, please. No, I'd love to hear from you.
So I'm Afra. So the feedback, the coaching competition I had was very effective. I realized now that it was really grounded in results. So I didn't feel like this person was biased for telling me, but it was very authentic,
Yes.
and I got to see what's the trend.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherilyn. The feedback that I received, it was transferable.
Okay.
So in the setting where I received the feedback as well as outside of that, I think that there's a lot of value in receiving feedback that we can use other places.
Nice. 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 That's really nice. Good. So good feedback is all of those things, and it is more, right? So what immediately resonates with me is my mom, because she gives me the hardest advice about me as a person, right? So one of the last pieces of advice she gave me was that I get too excited when I give a gift, and my excitement overshadows the person receiving the gift, and it's not my moment, it's their moment. She told me this is an adult woman, and it was great feedback. It was great feedback. So I stepped back a little bit. I let them have their moment. It's transferable. It's not my moment. You gotta know when is your moment. And when I think about why, it's because it was delivered with love. So anybody who's gonna give me feedback, you have to have a relationship with me. We have to have respect, love, trust. or it's going to be really difficult for it to mean anything to me. It resonated with me. It was true, right? As soon as she said that, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I do. And then the last piece was I could do it. Like I felt a sense of like, okay, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. So just some additional characteristics. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to watch Yo-Yo Ma. Is anyone familiar with Yo-Yo Ma? Okay, fantastic. And of Yo-Yo Ma, has anyone seen him coach before? Okay, great. So Yo-Yo Ma is a world-renowned musician. The thing that is really awesome about him is anytime he is a guest in an orchestra, he requests small groups of practice with their musicians so that he can help make them better. Okay, so he's an outstanding coach. So we're going to watch him, and I'm going to pause at a certain point, about 2 minutes in. And what I want you to do is just reflect on what are all the things that he does that makes his coaching effective. And when we think about what makes coaching effective, you take care of your people, okay, and you make them better. So what are all the concrete things he's doing to take care of his people and to make them better?
He wants fire, we'll give him some fire, all right? Okay, so. Close to the bridge. Bounce it. Yes. Yeah, that's good. Good. Don't worry about the notes. We're not here to, play perfectly, just to get character. Okay? Jennifer, you know what I feel when you go? I don't feel that actually the rest is actually a slap in the face. It's like you want to go on and then someone goes, bang, now, What I hear from you, you go da 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 da. Oh, sounds like a nice phrase, right? Okay, so go ahead. Good. Wait, and then same thing. Right? All the way to the end. So let's try 33 again. Really don't give up. All right? 3, 4. Good. Kari, it's fabulous. But you know what? You play it one more time.
Right.
You're giving it away.
Okay.
You're making it explode too soon. So suppress it. All of that great thing, just put a lid over it. Don't take away any of the energy, but just put a lid over it. Let's try it again. All right? 3, 4. Yes. Do you hear it? Sounds better, huh? Okay. Now, I have to tell you something. You guys haven't really played.
Okay, so if you'll take about 20 seconds and jot down the concrete things that Yo-Yo Ma does to make his coaching effective. He's taking care of his people, he's making them better, and what are his concrete actions? How is he doing that? go ahead and take a second, please, and share with someone at your table. Thank you so much. Theo, will you start, please?
Sure. In our discussion, something that we brought up was the fact that his feedback was very direct, and he wasn't really beating around the bush. He noticed like the small little tweak that they could make, and immediately was just like, here's what you can fix. Here's how you can fix it. And then we discussed also like the practice piece. Like it wasn't just like, here's how you can fix it. I'll show you now. Now let's all play again.
Yeah.
But like he stopped each of them individually and made them like practice the thing, and then even like gave them feedback on the practice, and some of them had to practice more than once before they all came back and played again.
Nice. Okay, other thoughts? Yes.
Um,
Will you tell us your name?
My name is Jackson, and one thing that I really liked about it was that he was not very concerned with, when he was doing the modeling and working with the gentleman, he wasn't concerned necessarily with the notes. He was concerned about the skill. And I was just kind of trying to compare that to what we do as coaches, instructional coaches, and I was thinking if I was role modeling something with a teacher, I wouldn't care if they said the Depression started in 1929 or 1930. That's not the point right now. Let's just practice on 100% or whatever it is when you're practicing. So I thought that was really cool. He didn't care about the notes. He cared about the skill.
Nice. So the isolation is really important to the practice. That's a great point. Other things, yes. Want to tell us your name?
Myra.
Myra.
I noticed that he was really committed to the implementation of the feedback.
Yes.
And that as soon as he was quick to acknowledge when it was appropriately implemented. So, and also his physical placement, he places among everyone.
Yes.
He really positions up above, or if he didn't walk around.
Yes.
He was very much one of them.
Yes. Nice.
Okay. It also just occurred to me that he was actually using a lot of different like modalities to express the feedback when he stood up, and he was both saying what the feedback was, but also like showing, so that there was really a lot of like conceptual awareness. I don't know if that was intentional on his part, but it was reminding me of teaching.
It's natural to him, right? It was helpful. Yes.
Hi everybody, I'm Sean, and I agree with everything that everybody said, but some of the questions I have, and this like goes different from the way that I usually lean, is like coming to a conclusion with somebody as opposed to just like telling them specifically.
Yes.
And then kind of like I'm wondering what the further application is, like will these people now know that how they play really leads to emotional, like how people interpret the emotion broader than just a single piece? Or will they just think it's only in this single piece? Do I have to do this like rapid thing? Like how is this application? And I feel like that's so contrary to the way that I operate.
Nice. And because how do you operate, Sean?
I operate by coming to like a conclusion with the teacher and having them like extend that learning. Like we focus on a specific, but extend that learning to like beyond that specific moment to like the broader implications of how they are teaching and the pedagogical interaction.
Great. Do you want to speak to that?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to speak to that, unless somebody else wants to speak to that. Does anybody want to speak to that? Okay, great. I think it has everything to do with the level of experience a teacher you're working with, right? So in the first years, we're a lot more directive. We're a lot more directive because A, they haven't had the practice, right? These people are professionals over here. They're playing in a professional orchestra, right? So that's the difference. In the first years, we're going to say it's this. You know, I want you to work on this. How does that sound to you? Does it sound okay? We're going to work on it. With our most experienced teachers, when I sit down with Emma McCormick, who is an outstanding teacher on every level, we are collaboration. Everything is collaboration. We are thought partners for one another. And I end the conversation with, what do you want to do with this? Because that's how excellent she is, and her results are out of this world. And if I don't approach her like that, she's going to want to get out because I'm going to be micromanaging her. Yes?
Just to kind of speak to what you were saying, also that within different genres of teaching, there are different techniques and things like that people use. I come from I have a performing arts background, and it's very directive. You know, it's very, okay, you're doing this, it needs to get corrected, they'll model it for you, and then they make you do it again. So, so there's different modalities, and I know that
most people have adopted the sort of, doctor curriculum rounds or coaching rounds or whatever it is that you know, that sort of model that doctors use, you know, and in sort of doctors don't, you know, sit there and wait for you to reflect on, you know, they might send you home with a lot of reflect about, but, you know, but I think the teacher model is really based on building that relationship and creating moments of reflection, so that the teacher comes up with the answer. You know.
And I think the doctor model, we would think the doctor is the expert in typically treating a layperson. And so of course you're going to be more directive. But if the doctor is treating another doctor, right, it's going to look like a very different conversation. And so you have to change your coaching depending on who you are coaching. Okay. Any other thoughts on Yo-Yo Ma before we watch the second part? What I will say is yes to everything you said, and then I will say practice, 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 practice. In your observation feedback meetings that you have with your teachers, the heart of the meeting is the practice. The heart of the meeting is the practice. You do not want to step outside that meeting until they have practiced that action step and you've given feedback. You jumped in, you said, hey, let me try for a second, watch what I do, da 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 da. Now you try, pause there, you did this excellent, I need you to work on this. Right, you affirm and then you coach the whole entire way until they get there. It's not enough to practice at once. You should be practicing that skill at least 3 to 7 times within one 20 to 30 minute meeting. The other thing that I'll say is there is no substitute for, I don't call it real-time feedback and I don't call it modeling, I call it team teaching. There's no substitute for team teaching. So what he's doing right now is he is an artist alongside, he is a musician alongside, that is his craft, and he is team playing. And we as leaders, we need to be in classrooms team teaching. We need to be there with them. We are teachers first and foremost. If we are leaders of schools, then we are teachers first and foremost. I would recommend as much as possible to always be teaching at least something, whether it's a 20-minute guided reading group for 3 days a week, whatever it is, teach something. And then as you walk in the moment, that team teaching is worth tenfold what it is after the moment. Because in the moment, and my signal with teachers is I just put my hand on their back, and they know that when they finish up whatever it is they're saying, I'm going to come in for a minute. And I'm going to teach for a while, and then I'm going to say, what do you think, Mr. Group? And then he's going to teach for a while. But I'm not going to leave until he's got that point. So I'm going to stay with him until we get it. So gone are the days when we sit in the back of the room with a laptop. Like it's not highest leverage. What's highest leverage is that you're in there with them. Now, yeah, you might sit down and take some notes and record, and then you're back in. That would be my biggest piece of advice. Can you imagine if Yo-Yo Ma was sitting off to the side with a laptop and he was taking down everything they were doing? So much more effective when you're in the game. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to watch the next 2 minutes, because in the next 2 minutes, he gives no instructional advice. Okay, he doesn't give them any more bite-sized pieces of feedback. So the question I have for all of us is, why does he engage in this conversation?
Together, right? Much. At all, except an orchestra. So we met for the first time yesterday, and was it easy to come together?
You gotta understand you're gonna have disagreements, and that's part of the whole process, and that you've got to find a way to deal with them. So it's efficient, you come around, but you also take the ideas and try to make the best performance possible, yeah.
Jennifer, it may be an embarrassing question, but you know, if you're in a group and you're playing with somebody that you really, really can't stand, what do you do about it? Do you leave? Do you stay in the group? What happens?
I think I've learned to try to put myself in that person's shoes, just so I can understand where they're coming from, because it's probably completely different from what I'm doing or thinking.
Also respect each other's individuality, because each person is going to have ideas that will contribute to the whole.
I think that's where trust is very important in a group, to trust each other. Trust each other enough to be vulnerable too with each other.
Sometimes very hard, but to be vulnerable to somebody else who's a colleague and may not be someone that you're going to be very close to. But I guess if you have a common goal, which is like music brings you together, and we're here to serve music in a way. We really want the music to live and to make it sing out. Well, I don't know. Should we try again? Should we actually now perform this incredibly well-rehearsed march? Let's try it, okay?
And from there, they play the rest of the piece. take a second, jot down your notes, why that conversation. It did not have a single piece of instructional advice. There was nothing prescriptive about it. And then when you're ready, please share with someone at your table. Will someone start us off next? Why the second portion? The value, the benefit, why? Yes, thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Ashley.
Hey, Ashley.
In our group, we talked a lot about building relationships and trust amongst the group, and how you try to get them to open up with each other and a lot of team building with each other. Especially if you're in an orchestra, you have to have a lot of team building, and in coaching, you have to have a team building with the other people that you're coaching, so that they can kind of feedback off of each other, not just you, but the other people that are in the cohort. So that's basically what we talked about.
This feels really obvious, but I just had like such an aha when you were sharing that around the relationships. One of my favorite articles on classroom management, which I don't really like that term, but classroom management is promoting change through relationships. Afterwards, I'll get an email list of anybody who wants soft copies. I'll send that as well, but it's promoting change through relationships. And it gives all of these statistics around how like the number one factor in whether or not a classroom is well managed is the relationships that are built with students. Okay, I don't care what management system you're using, I don't care what taxonomy techniques you're using, I don't care about any of this, right? It matters, but number one is the relationship you're building. And so when we think about effective leaders, it's the same thing. It's the relationships you build with your people, okay? If you're building strong relationships, if they trust you, if they feel good, if they feel safe, right, they're going to be in. They're going to be all in. They're going to want to do it. It's exactly the piece that Simon Sinek was talking about. So it's such a nice point, Ashley. Other thoughts on why? Why the second piece? Yes?
Myra and it's Bexler. And creating that community accountability amongst themselves, he's really also building leaders. So it's not just, I'm going to tell you what to do. It's more like, I believe in you now.
Yes.
And I know that you can find your own leadership style.
Yes. 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 What about you?
Susie here. We talked about how at the end he centered everyone around the common purpose of like,
Yes.
so we're all here to serve music. All right, let's go and try it again.
Nice.
And it kind of brought the whole conversation together.
Yes. Yes. That mattered so much. He said, we want to make the music come alive, right? It's not inspiring when we give like robotic, like do response. It's like, it's about student achievement. And we're doing this because of student achievement. And if we want students to gain, you got to feel it, whatever it is for you, right? Like teaching is a craft. Teaching, you are an artist. And so you have to bring it alive and you have to bring the why, but you have to do it in a way that you believe and that your teachers believe as well.
There's this book called The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey, and it talks about 14 ways that you actively build trust. And I feel like he was modeling one of those ways, like creating transparency. And they're talking about like their feelings about, that's, like you said, it was kind of embarrassing, feelings about someone else who you may not like, right? But also transparency around a goal.
Yes.
Like we're all here for a reason, and so I think that I would definitely recommend that book, and it's great.
Will you say it for us again, please?
The Speed of Trust.
The Speed of Trust.
By Stephen Covey.
Nice. The Speed of Trust. I've never heard that. Somebody was singing back here on the hand raise. Okay. The Speed of Trust also, I think that's what makes me think of like this 80-20 rule. Like there's something around being a leader that like 80%, like you can make accommodations. You can work with someone. You can tease it out in such a way that they're happy. And if you're doing that 80% of the time, the 20% of the time where you have to say, listen, I'm sorry, I know you don't like it, this is the decision I'm making, I'm asking you to go with it because you trust me. And if you do that 20% of the time versus all of the time, you'll see that the people that you're coaching and that you're leading will say, okay, right? I don't like it, I don't want to do this, but in this situation I will because of the way that you are leading this organization and the ways in which I trust and believe in you. Paul Bambrick, he's been a mentor of mine for several years. He gave me some really good advice probably 4 or 5 years ago. He said, as a leader, whatever your it is, you have to be it. Okay, so his point was like, most people think like it is like funny and like a good sense of humor. Like that's nice if that's your it, then like be it, because that's really like brings people in. But it might be that you're warm, it might mean that you're quirky, it might mean that you're inspirational, it might mean whatever it means, like you have to be it. Like you have to go there with yourself and you have to be it. M. Night Shyamalan had this great quote where he said, word for word, I am the highest paid writer on the universe. Okay, and like you read it, you're an asshole, right? Like that's what you just said. But then he follows it up with this, which makes it really nice. He says, and the reason why I'm not a better writer, I'm not more talented, I'm not this, but I do me better than anybody else does them. So there is something about talent and leadership where you're defined who you are at your core and you have to be it. And then the other thing that Paul said was the non-negotiables, you have to be relaxed. You have to be relaxed. As a leader, you have to be relaxed. People have to feel comfortable around you. If they don't feel comfortable around you, they can't grow. Okay, great. So from here, let's move. And let's think about the qualities of great coaches and then where we're going to go for the remainder of our 30 minutes. And then also this afternoon, we have another hour and a half together. Qualities of great coaches, they set the bar. Are you familiar with Julie Jackson? People here are familiar. Can you raise your hand if you know who she is and her work? Okay. She's a longtime teacher, principal, and now managing director for Uncommon. Last year she received the Peter Jennings Award. She is the best leader I've ever had. She's my manager. We spend 2 hours together every week. And when she was 7 or 8 years old, her father was murdered. Unsolved mystery, there's no leads, there's no anything, so a very traumatic experience. When she talks about her father's legacy, she talks about that the father taught her 3 things. The first thing is don't you ever let anyone else set the bar for you. In your life, in whatever your pursuit is, don't let anyone else set the bar. You set the bar. Once you set the bar, then you lead by example. And the second you reach that bar, you set it higher. And then the last piece is do what motivates you, do what inspires you, because if you do your passion, if you go after your passion, you will naturally motivate and inspire others. And then the thing that we're going to focus on today, which is much more concrete, is this idea, giving great feedback. It's taking care of your people, but it's also making them better, okay? And so that's a very vague statement, great feedback. So we're going to spend the rest of our time together figuring out what great feedback is, because it'll make all the difference in the world in making your people better. So let's move from here. Okay, so this is the big thing we're going to do today. We're going to think about bite-sized, actionable feedback, okay? Bite-sized, actionable feedback, and also hidden in there is the highest leverage. Okay, so we're constantly going to ask ourselves, if a teacher did this perfectly, what would the impact on student learning be? Because there are times that we pick a bite-sized, actionable next step, and teachers could do it perfectly, and it's going to do about this much in the classroom. Okay, and so we have to be thinking what's going to tip the classroom, what's the highest leverage. If the teacher can do it perfectly, it's truly going to make a difference in terms of student outcomes. And the second thing we're going to do, Paul Bambrick has developed a model for how to give this feedback. It's 6 different steps that you go through. And so in the afternoon, we're going to go over those 6 steps as well. So for this first part, let's think about the action step. If you can get the action step right for a teacher, everything else flows from there. Okay? We spent some time thinking about that effective feedback. It resonates with us. It's prescriptive. We know how to do it, and we believe we can do it. So we have to get the action step right. So that's our agenda for today. I'm going to move. So let's just dive in. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch a teacher for about, I think it's 1.5 minutes. And what you are going to do is you are going to think of the action step. What is the action step that you would give to this teacher? Don't worry about the second bullet. It wasn't supposed to show up yet, but it did. So just the action step, okay, that you're going to give to this teacher. Okay, here we go. This is 8th grade Spanish class. And she speaks in English most of the time, so no worries.
With your partner, you're going to turn and talk and take a few seconds to think about the nationalities of people from these countries. There's special adjectives in Spanish to describe what country someone is from. You might find them on the next page of your packet. So, take a minute with your partner to go through the nationalities of the countries you just wrote down. You might find them on the next page of your packet. Practice pronouncing them. Go. Just the countries that we just did. Just the countries you just wrote down. They're on the next page. Just the countries that we just wrote down. Yeah, okay, they're up here. Excellent. Who can tell me how to say from Guatemala? From Guatemala.
And so what do you want?
Thumbs up or thumbs down. It's helpful to see it one more time, or no, I feel good with what I saw. Okay, the majority of the room says no, I feel good with what I saw. I like that. So take 30 seconds, and you have an action step for the teacher. You want it to be small enough so that she can master it in a week. You want it to be actionable, and you want it to be clear. And the trick is you're not allowed to talk around it. When you share with your partner, you have to read it directly from your paper, because that helps with our clarity. So go ahead and work on just wordsmithing your ideas into one clear action step. Absolutely. So one clear action step. So this would not be the action step here, but another action step might be something like, I'm thinking of ones that are already there, but that's fine. Script 3 questions as a CFU, ask an H, M, and L, record their answers. So that's what I mean by clear, bite-sized, actionable. That has nothing to do with that clip, but that's what I mean by that. And then you're going to read it directly from your paper. About 10 more seconds. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. Each person at the table is going to read out their action step with no commentary whatsoever. Just read it directly from your paper. We're going to whip around and do that one time. When your table has done that one time, will you just raise your hand at the table so I can just visually see where we are? Okay? So no commentary, read your action step to your table. Okay, here we go.
I wrote speak using clear chronological.
Okay, so from here, we're going to pick back up. What's most important right now that we're focusing on is that we get the action step correct, and then we give time for practice, okay? So you've spent some time refining your action step. What Serena ends up coming up with is script all directions. So you have to write them before you give them, right? Script all directions using as few words as possible and have a clear signal for go, right? So partner on the left, do-do-do-do, partner on the right, do-do-do-do, go. Okay, so does everybody understand the action step that she gave? Okay, So that's half the battle. The other battle is practicing until it is right. There are so many times we end an observation and feedback meeting and that teacher knows, they know the action step, but you don't, there's this gap, right? Doug Lemov talks about get it, do it. There's always a get it, do it gap. We get a lot more than we are able to do. And so we have to make sure that they do it with us and we give that in the moment feedback, okay? And you engage with some of that team teaching. So I sped along. She and Serena, they discussed it. The teacher did a lot of the thinking around it, and then they decided on that action step, and now we're going to watch the practice.
What do you think? Okay.
I guess I should practice it again.
Okay. Sure. I think you can use like if you sit by the window, raise your hand. Okay. Windows. You're going to say the 5 nationalities first. Partners going to listen. People by the closets. You're going to say the nationalities second. Your partner's going to listen. If you have time, third time, say them together.
Okay.
Go.
So, people by the windows, raise your hand. You guys start. Say these 5 nationalities first. Then, people by the closets, raise your hands. You guys go second. Say the 5 nationalities. Then, if there's still time, recite them together. Go.
Perfect. Yeah, because that kind of eliminates like who, what, what's my turn, and things like that. Yeah, that's perfect. So, you think we can do them for Kuidar?
Please stop it.
Yeah, great.
Fantastic. Take a second to find the...
So before we watch that, just jot down any notes from Serena's practice. Okay, anything that you want to remember, anything that resonates. The thing that we're pulling out here is it's not as easy as practice once. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to watch her execute. Something that I want to say, it is markedly better, and it's still not quite as good as the practice that she did in Serena's office. Okay, so you'll see that. Yes?
I have a question. I've done some rounds of feedback where I give some, give folks time to practice on it,
yep.
And it kind of feels condescending sometimes.
Yep.
It kind of comes off as like, you know, like, really, you want to do that, you know?
Yep.
And I don't know if that's just my awkwardness that I need
Yep.
to go through, or
Yep.
if there's a tip around that.
Does anybody want to speak to that? Yes, let's go Chloe, and then let's go here.
Chloe, I think part of it is awkward. You have to build a culture around the fact that we're gonna do it again and again and again, and then people eventually buy in. But I think it's part of the culture of your team that you just have to make it like, this is expected that we practice all the time.
Just to reiterate that we initiated a lot of practice at my school this past year, and I think that was one of the things, like we got a lot of pushback from teachers because they feel those same kind of things, and it all just came back to the culture piece. Just like we announced it at PDs, we let teachers know like this is the way that we're doing our professional development, this is the way that we're doing our observation and feedback cycles, and helping them to ease into it by starting off with like bite-sized and like small, good, easy things to practice to build up to some of those more challenging things.
I will say the other thing, I remember this moment, it was probably 3 years ago when Julie Jackson led one of her workshops for the first time for All of Uncommon. I hadn't worked with Julie before. And she asked somebody to volunteer to come up to the stage to practice this routine or procedure. And I'm like, oh, holy shit, like don't call on me, please, right? So she brings a teacher up and they have this model. And I mean to tell you, Julie interrupted her 15 times. And that would be the small side of how many times she interrupted her. And I'm getting like more and more uncomfortable, and my face is getting red, and I'm just watching, okay? And then what ended up happening was, by the end, the teacher was so damn good, okay? So the buy-in came around watching the teacher do it at the beginning and be really mediocre to getting 3 minutes or 5 minutes of intense feedback from Julie Jackson, and it was excellent. Like I was watching and I couldn't believe how good it was, excuse me. And so I think, again, that Paul Bambrick talks about we change from either the inside out or the outside in, whatever makes sense. You don't convince people that something works, you show them that it works. So once teachers feel that they're getting better, they're gonna be bought in, okay? All right. So now let's watch her execute, but I think it's a great point.
Nationality adjectives for the countries you already have written on your map. These ones up here. Locate them. Ohoseki. Almost at feet. Waiting on one. Now with your partner, people on the Windows side, raise your hand, Windows people. Windows people. You're gonna read those words, those nationality adjectives, to your partner first. Then people on the closet side, raise your hand, closet side. That's you. Raise your hand, closet side. Tyree. You are gonna say the same thing. Those words, you're going to say to your partner. Windows side people, start. You're saying the nationality vocabulary words for these countries right here. Closet side, repeat. Go.
So with someone at your table, what resonates with you? After watching that, after seeing the original, after seeing the bite-sized feedback, seeing the practice that takes place, and then seeing the implementation, what resonates with you? Someone at your table. Any aha moments or things you want to share with the group that came out after sort of just watching that quick cycle? Yeah, let's go 1 and 2, please.
I think one
Can you
thing
tell us
that's
your name,
really
please?
Brian.
Brian.
One thing that's really challenging about coaching is that oftentimes we want it to be as immediate as possible.
Yep.
So like she had the coaching session and then she did change.
Yes.
But like we said that it wasn't like perfect
Nope.
yet. So at our table we were discussing. Well, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Aaron.
Aaron was like, well, I think the directions are just too long for such a short thing, which
Yep.
I don't necessarily disagree, but but the thing that we're honing, right, is explicit
Yes.
directions,
Yes.
right? So like in coaching,
Yes.
there's so many different ways
Yes.
that we can approach
Yes.
one problem.
Yes. And the yo-yo mom. I don't care about that right now. What do we say? I don't care about the notes,
The notes.
right? I want you to do this right now. It's a great point.
My name's Elizabeth, and we were just talking about how in even a really short coaching conversation, that very short 1 to 2 minutes of practice that they did together, there was significant improvement. So kind of related to your point about the lack of comfort and the feeling of condescension or whatever, just that once people actually see that the practice improves so much so quickly, I feel like it can really bring people on board.
Nice, nice. And a core idea here, right? This is why our feedback is bite-sized. I don't even think they should say new teachers. I think they should say people. Like, we can only really improve in 1 to 2 areas at a time. When I think about that meeting, the first time I saw it, I thought, okay, that's pretty basic. This is a pretty basic direction or a pretty basic action step. It was really difficult in the moment while you're trying to do everything else that you're trying to do that a good teacher does, right? Because it's not in isolation, it's difficult, right? And so we don't overwhelm our teachers. In each meeting, we give them 1 to 2 action steps that they can implement for that next week. I just thought about one more thing. Can you tell me your name, please?
Nima.
Say it again?
Nima.
Nima, thank you. So one of the great things about once you just start this team teaching or real-time feedback or whatever it is you want to call it, it becomes the culture, right? So much so that, so we had our founding year at Leadership Prep Canarsie this past year, and our first year teacher, Jared Groom, great guy, great teacher. Towards the end of the year, like, he jumped in on me, right? So I'm teaching whole class. I'm bringing in like this little girl who wrote this out of this world poem, right? I'm bringing her in to snack to the other classroom to share her poem. And so I'm talking it up. I'm like, you guys, this poem is out of this world, and like, you're gonna love it. And then Mr. Groom's over here, and he goes, Miss Stephanie Crouch, can I pause you? And I was like, yeah, Mr. Groom, like, you can pause me, do your thing, right? And he's like, excuse me, Princeton Tigers. Miss Evelyn Crouch is speaking. Your hands are in your snack bags. Please take them out of your snack bags. Please put them on the table, and please be respectful while she's speaking. And I was like, thank you, Jared. All right, high five. Right, to the point to where the first year teacher then jumped in on his principal, because that's our culture. Because we're all just like honing and perfecting our craft. And so that's just like a good moment, and so you have to be open to that as well, and it makes it less awkward. Okay, so from here, let's move. So when we think about the criteria for the right action step, because the right action step is half the battle, the first is highest leverage. This is the first thing you want to ask yourself, and you want to ask yourself every single time, okay? If the teacher masters this perfectly, okay, how much is it going to affect student learning? If it's not, it's the wrong action step. It's got to be high leverage. It's got to be clear, and it's got to be measurable. Can anyone understand the action step? That's why I had you read directly from your paper. When we start talking around action steps, it gets muddied. And so one best practice, I always read my action step directly from my computer. So I have a whole conversation, and when we get to that point, okay, I say, okay, I think this is it for you. I think this is what's gonna take your teaching to the next level, and I read it directly from there, so I'm positive that it's clear and I'm not muddying it. And then you wanna make sure that you can see, right? Like what is the evidence that if it actually happens, you'll know that it's going to happen. And then again, the last piece is bite size. And the way we think about bite size, you can accomplish it in a week. If you can accomplish it in 1 week, it's bite size. If it takes longer, it's not bite sized. So we think highest leverage, clear and measurable, bite sized. And the questions you ask, highest leverage, how much is it going to impact student learning? Clear and measurable, write it down and read it. And then bite size can be accomplished in a week. Yes?
So, not that this happens all that often, I'm Kirsten.
Hi, Kirsten.
But in the course of like a debrief conversation, you'll uncover some other circumstances where the action that you had is no longer the highest lever. So do you go into the game with like a backup?
I would say
but like a conversation with some other backup things.
We're going to talk about delivering it in our part 2, and I think that's going to come up a little bit more. Okay. 2 things I would say. One is if you're in your teachers' classrooms often enough, you're going to be able to nail it. If you find yourself in a situation where you only got in for 7 minutes, don't have an observation feedback meeting because you don't know enough to have one, right? So you've got to get in there, and I'd say that's it. If you're in there, you'll know. And then other things might come up and you say, you know what, that's not what we're focusing on right now, let's really get at this. Yeah, absolutely. So let's do this quick activity and then let's break and come back together. So thinking about converting long-term goals into bite-sized action steps. So when we think about management, it looks something like this. So this is too high to be an action step. Keep students on task. Okay, I want you to keep students on task, right? Not helpful in any way, it's too broad. Okay? This is still too high. Monitor students to prevent off-task behavior. Too high, okay? Here's where we are. This is getting better. Stand at the corner of the room so that you can see all students. Okay, so if we think really quickly, is it high leverage? Yes, because students on task, students doing the work matters. Is it clear? Yeah, I'm gonna stand on one side of the room and I'm gonna look at everybody. Okay, can I do it in a week? I can do it in a second, right? And then finally, be seen looking, so do one of these, right? So that you're just making sure that all students know, yeah, good job, I like that, I like it. Put your head down. Okay, good. I don't mean put your head, I mean put it like on your paper. I don't mean put your head down. Right, so that's the difference between something that's way too high. This is actually what you want the teacher to do, but this is how it needs to be delivered. Okay, let's look at one more example. Okay, to bite says actually, okay, too high. 100% of students on task at all times. Still too high. Manage individual student non-compliance effectively. Better. So your job right now, take 30 seconds and write down an action step that would be better. Again, it's high leverage. It's going to make a difference in terms of student outcomes. It's clear. And they can accomplish it within a week. Back up this afternoon, we'll come right back to this moment, and I'll give you about 1 more minute to think about it and work on it before we take it live to the table. But what I'd love for you to do right now, the last page is a notes page, or if you're keeping a notebook, anything that you're keeping, just put your reflections in one spot. Will you just take 30 seconds and write down the top 2 things that resonate with you right now? The top 2 things that you're taking away that'll make a difference in your coaching. And while you're finishing up your last thoughts, just to keep us on time, could we have one person please just share out those 2 takeaways, and then we'll pick back up in this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Just one, I think the team teaching piece and like having clear systems and protocols so that teachers understand what it is.
Nice.
Helpful.
Nice. Very good. Okay, great. Could we have one more person? Share out a key takeaway? Yes.
One takeaway for me is that things that might seem practical are okay because they're like very bite-sized and measurable, and those ones can be kind of
great. So tactical can be high impact. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll see everyone again in